All right, all right, all right. Welcome back to another story time session with your favorite demon slayer, Shia Fire. Okay, so today this is a continuation of the barrier gate that none can pass. We are exposing the enemy and the imposter rastas. Um, so confusion of face and whatnot. Who are you? Who are we? So, Spirit told me today to talk about the land of Shinar. Let's find that scripture. Hot so fast. Oh, no, big siren. All right. Land of Shinar. So, in the Hebrew Bible, Shinar is the name of the southern region of Mesopotamia. It was used to describe the land that included the cities of Babylon, Erech or Warka, and Akkad or Agad or Agade within the kingdom of Nimrod. In the biblical book of Genesis, Sumer is also known as Shinar. The Bible uses Shinar metaphorically to describe wickedness. Genesis 11:1 through 9 tells the story of the construction of the Tower of Babel in Shinar, which some say is an attempt to explain the existence of different human languages. Isaiah 11 also mentions Shinar as a place that will contain a faithful remnant of Israel. So, location today is Iraq. The land of Shinar was located in today's countries of Iraq, almost entirely, Kuwait, a northern part of, and Iran, a little western part of. The name Shinar occurs 8 times in the Bible, in which it refers to Babylonia. Okay. So Sinar, Sinar, or Sign Air, is the name for the southern region of Mesopotamia used by the Hebrew Bible. Etymology, it is equivalent to the Egyptian Sngr and Hittite Sanhar or Sanhara, all referring to southern Mesopotamia. Some Assyriologists considered Shinar a western variant or cognate of Sumer, with their original being the Sumerians' own name for their country, Ki-Engi or Kai-Engi-R, Kainger. But this is beset with philological difficulties. Another hypothesis derives the name from a Kassite tribe known as the Samharu, whose name would have been later used for Babylonia in general. Saith, 1895, identified Shinar as cognate with the following names: Sangara or Sangar, mentioned in the context of the Asiatic conquest of Thutmose III, 15th century BC, Sankhar of the Amarna letters of 14th century BC, the Greeks' Singara, and modern Sinjar in Upper Mesopotamia near the Khabur River. Accordingly, he proposed that Shinar was in Upper Mesopotamia, but acknowledged that the Bible gives important evidence that it was in the south. in the south. Say it again, in the south. So we are looking for the border of wickedness. Okay. So, Albright in 1924 suggested identification with the kingdom of Cana or Cana. In the Hebrew Bible, the name Shinar occurs 8 times in the Bible, in which it refers to Babylonia. That location of Shinar is evident from its description as encompassing both Babel slash Babylon in northern Babylonia and Erech or Uruk in southern Babylonia. In the book of Genesis 10 and 10, the beginning of Nimrod's kingdom is said to have been Babel or Babylon and Erech or Uruk, and Akkad and Calneh in the land of Shinar. Verse 11 and 2 states that Shinar enclosed the plain that became the site of the Tower of Babel after the Great Flood. If you've been following, I did a video on the tower, the tower that was built in Chicago, one of the biggest towers built in the world at that time. I forget the name of it, but we'll come back to that later. So in Genesis 14, 1 and 9, King Amraphel rules Shinar. It is further mentioned in Joshua 7:21, Isaiah 11:11, Daniel 1 and 2, and Zechariah 5 and 11 as a general synonym for Babylonia. The book of Jubilees 9 and 3 allots Shinar, or in the Ethiopic text, Sadna or Senna, or to Asher, son of Shem. Jubilees 10 and 20 states that the Tower of Babel was built with bitumen from the sea of Shinar. In popular culture, the region's name in its Greek form is used in the title of Chants of Shinar, a video game that draws motives from the Tower of Babel. Now let's read about it. Okay, Genesis chapter 10. So this is the family history of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the sons of Noah. After the flood, these 3 men had sons. The sons of Japheth were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. The sons of Gomer were Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. The sons of Javan were Elisha, Tarshish, Kittim, and Rodanim. Those who lived in the lands around the Mediterranean Sea came from these sons of Japheth. All the families grew and became different nations, each nation with its own land and its own language. The sons of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. The sons of Cush were Seba or Seba, Havilah, Sapta, Raamah, and Sapteka. The sons of Raamah were Sheba and Dedan. Cush also had a descendant named Nimrod, who became a very powerful man on earth. He was a great hunter before the Lord, which is why people say someone is like Nimrod, a great hunter before the Lord. At first, Nimrod's kingdom covered Babylon, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Babylonia. From there, he went to Assyria, where he built the cities of Nineveh, Rehoboth, and Kala, as in California. He also built Rezin, the great city between Nineveh and Kala. Rezin. What city is between, no, change that. What, sorry, no. What great city is between California and Nevada? This is Prim. Prim, Nevada is an unincorporated community that straddles Interstate 15 at the California-Nevada border. It was formerly known as State Line. The Lake Tahoe Ho region also includes small cities and towns in both California and Nevada, including South Lake Tahoe, Myers, State Line, Zephyr Cove, Glenbrook, Emerald Bay, and the Markleeville and Kirkwood areas. Okay, so Mizraim was the father of the Luddites, Anamites, Lahabites, Naphtalites, Pathrusites, Cathluhites, and the people of Crete. The Philistines came from the Casluhites. Canaan was the father of Sidon, his first son, and of Heth. He was also the father of the Jebusites, Amorites, Girgashites, Hivites, Archites, Sinites, Arvadites, Zemorites, and Hamathites. The families of the Canaanites scattered. Their land reached from Sidon to Gerar, as far as Gaza, and then to Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zebulun, as far as Lasha. So, okay, now verse 11 and 2 says, as people moved from the east, they found a plain in the land of Babylonia and settled there. Okay, so now we're going to talk about the Plains Indians. Where'd you go? Where did you go? Open up a new tab. Okay, so the Plains Indians, or indigenous peoples of the Great Plains and Canadian prairies, are the Native American tribes and First Nation band governments who have historically lived on the interior plains, the Great Plains, and Canadian prairies of North America. While hunting, farming cultures have lived on the Great Plains for centuries prior to European contact, the region is known for the horse cultures that flourished from the 17th century through the late 19th century. Their historic nomadism and armed resistance to domination by the government and military forces of Canada and the United States have made the Plains Indian culture groups an archetype in literature and art for Native Americans everywhere. The Plains tribes are usually divided into two broad classifications which overlap to some degree. The first group became a fully nomadic horse culture during the 18th and 19th centuries, following the vast herds of American bison, although some tribes occasionally engaged in agriculture. These include the Arapaho, now pay attention, because the hoe is who we're after, okay? The whore of Babylon. So the Arapaho sounds like a rapping hoe, Assiniboine, Blackfoot, Cheyenne, Comanche, Crow, Gross Venture, Kiowa, the Lakota, Lipan, Plains Apache or Kiowa Apache, Plains Cree, Plains Ojibwa, Sarsi, Nakota or Stony, and Tonkawa. The second group were sedentary and semi-sedentary, and in addition to hunting bison, they lived in villages, raised crops, and actively traded with other tribes. These include the Arikara, Hidatsa, Iowa, Kaw or Kansa, Kitsai, Mandan, Missouri, Omaha, Osage, Oto, Pawnee, Ponca, Quapaw, Wichita, and the Santee Dakota, Yanktonai, and Yankton, Dakota. Okay, now the basket. Okay, a vision of a woman in a basket, Zechariah 5:5. Okay, Zechariah 5:5 says, then the angel who was talking with me came forward and said to me, look up and see what is going out. What is it? I asked. He answered, it is a measuring basket going out. He also said, it is a symbol of the people's sins in all the land. Then the lid made of lead was raised, and there was a woman sitting inside the basket. The angel said, the woman stands for wickedness. Then he pushed her back into the basket and put the lid back down. Then I looked up and saw two women going out with the wind in their wings. Their wings were like those of a stork, and they lifted up the basket between earth and the sky. I asked the angel who was talking with me, where are they taking the basket? They are going to Babylonia to build a temple for it, he answered. When the temple is ready, they will set the basket there in its place. I looked up again and saw four chariots going out between two mountains, mountains of bronze. Red horses pulled the first chariot, black horses pulled the second chariot, white horses pulled the third chariot, and strong spotted horses pulled the fourth chariot. I asked the angel who was talking with me, what are these, sir? He said, these are the four spirits of heaven. They have just come from the presence of the Lord of the whole world. The chariot pulled by the black horses will go to the land of the north. The white horses will go to the land of the west. And the spotted horses will go to the land of the south. When the powerful horses went out, they were eager to go through all the earth. So he said, go through all the earth, and they did. Then he called to me, look, the horses that went north have caused my spirit to rest in the land of the north. The Lord spoke his word to me, saying, take silver and gold from Heldai, Tobijah, and Jediah, who were captives in Babylon. Go that same day to the house of Josiah, son of Zephaniah, who came from Babylon, make the silver and gold into a crown and put it on the head of Joshua, son of Jehozadak, the high priest. Tell him this is what the Lord all-powerful says. A man whose name is the branch will branch out from where he is, and he will build the temple of the Lord. One man will build the temple of the Lord, and the other will receive honor. One man will sit on his throne and rule, and the other will be a priest on his throne and rule. And the uh, yeah, one man will sit on his throne and rule, and the other will be a priest on his throne. And these two men will work together in peace. The crown will be kept in the temple of the Lord to remind Heldai, Tobijah, Jediah, and Josiah, son of Zephaniah. People living far away will come and build the temple of the Lord. Then you will know the Lord all-powerful has sent me to you. This will happen if you completely obey the Lord your God. Okay. Let's see. Okay, so Zechariah 5. We're going to go to Wikipedia. So Zechariah 5 is the fifth of the 14 chapters in the book of Zechariah in the Hebrew Bible, or the Old Testament of the Christian Bible. This book contains the prophecies attributed to the prophet Zechariah and is a part of the book of the 12 minor prophets. This chapter records the sixth and seventh of the 8 visions of Zechariah, which are compiled in a section so-called First Zechariah, consisting of Zechariah 1 through 8. The original text was written in the Hebrew language. This chapter is divided into 11 verses. Textual witnesses. Some early manuscripts containing the text of this chapter in Hebrew are of the Masoretic text, which includes the Codex Carensis from year 895, the Petersburg Codex of the Prophets 916, and Codex Leningradensis of 1008. Fragments containing parts of this chapter were found among the Dead Sea Scrolls, that is 4Q80, between 75 and 50 BCE, with extant verses 8 through 11. There is also a translation into Koine Greek known as the Septuagint, made in the last few centuries BCE. Again, the Septuagint was a copy by Alexander the Great. So I'm getting the Great Plains had something to do with Alexander the Great. So we are looking for the Wizard of Og, or Gog, Oz, AZ, Arizona. The Wizard, David Bowie, Bowie, Tanya, Jeanette, Bowie, Tool. Okay. Let me stop. Okay. So yes, something about the demonic builders. Darn it. Where's my notes? Yes, Alexander the Great transferred the Babylonian script and wove it into the Greek Septuagint from the incantation of Eridu, a city built by Cain for his son Enoch, by an incantation or a recipe, chicken and saffron. Okay, just hold that thought. All right, the vision of the flying scroll, 5:1-4. The sixth vision of the flying scroll indicates how the word of the Lord will be materialized to be scripture, quote unquote, as a gold standard to assess and cleanse the community. The people keep the city clean. So the covenant curse shows that the covenant does remain in force despite having once been broken. Vision of a woman in the basket, verses chapter 5, verses 5-11. The seventh of the 8 visions uncovers a woman in a basket, Hebrew, Ephah. Oh my gosh. We all know what Ephah is. Environmental Protection Agency. Symbolizing the iniquity of the people, or Hebrew word for EYE. A feminine idol to be stood on its base in a house or a temple is to be symbolically exiled to Babylon, while Judaism becomes fully a Yahweh alone religion. Verse 7. And behold, there was lifted up a talent of lead, and this is a woman that sitteth in the midst of the ephah. Talent, kicker, may denote a circle, as in Genesis chapter 13, verses 10 and 12, for an area where the Jordan was the center, or in 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 36, for a round loaf, gauge loaf. But here it refers to a disc or circular plate forming the cover of the round-shaped ephah. In the next verse, it is called the weight of lead. Okay, so a talent of lead, a kicker or sicker, or talent of silver in the Jewish tradition was equal to 3,000 shekels. Exodus chapter 38, verse 24, and weighed between 120 and 125 pounds. Now, the largest mosque for Muslim worship is in Dearborn, Michigan, which is 120,000 square feet. So again, the 120, and God said that men would only have 120 days or years or something like that. 120 is the day of coronation for the presidents. Okay, so a circle. Since the Hebrew word sicker signifies something plain and extended like a cake, as Arius Montanus observes, it may here refer to a plate of lead, which was laid over the mouth of the ephah as a lid unto it, though indeed it is afterwards called a stone of lead, and so seems to design a weight. This is a woman, literally one woman, who personified all sins or wickedness. Proverbs chapter 2, verse 16, chapter 5, verses 3 and 4. The sitting may represent her abiding tranquil condition in her sins, according to the climax in Psalm 1, verses 1-6, and hath not sat in the seat of the scornful, Psalms 1:1, and thou sittest and speakest against thy brother, Psalm 50:20. So it says, other measurements from the neighboring area, a Babylonian talent weighed 72 Attic pounds. That's why I keep saying the word Attic. And an Attic mina, or pound, weighed 100 drachmas. So one talent weighed 7,200 drachmas, according to Alienus, Alienus, whatever. An Alexandrian talent was equal to 12,000 Attic drachmas, which was the same as 125 Roman libras or pounds. Supposedly the same with that of Moses. The Roman talent contained 72 Italic minas, which were the same as the Roman libras. Okay. So, Shamash, the son of Zu, King Solomon of Israel, built a sanctuary to him east of Jerusalem. The shrine was later demolished by King Josiah. He also transformed the altar of God from Babylon and worked with the demon builders, the Igigi, or the Watchers. Eridu or Eridu, Eri, the fire city, or Ari, the lion slash eagle. Du, officially meaning creature. Du, du, God, do, dear. To walk, do meaning to walk, to go, to come, work, totality to the lion, to be finished, complete, to be suitable, fitting, to be necessary, to butt, gore, tossed by the lion, quarrel, struggle, fight with the lion. Okay, so the fire city. Let's see. What would be, I'm instantly going back to the Chicago fire. That's what instantly comes to mind. And I believe it was a fire in Detroit that was even larger than the Chicago fire. 33 minutes on the clock, 3:03 a.m. Looks like we were on to something. What would be the fire city of North America? Instantly, the Chicago fire of 1871 and the Great Rebuilding. List of town and city fires. North American wildfires. Problem of fire in the American city. The Great Fires of Chicago, 1871. Boston, 1872. Seattle, 1889. Baltimore, 1904. And San Francisco, 1906. Okay. The Peshtigo Fire, the most devastating forest fire in American history, swept through northeast Wisconsin. Northeast, east of Jerusalem. East of Jerusalem. Okay, what do we have here? We did Shinar. We're going to continue talking about the Plains Indians and see where that takes us. So this is the history of the Plains Indians. So the earliest people of the Great Plains mixed hunting and gathering wild plants. The cultures developed horticulture, then agriculture, as they settled in sedentary villages and towns. Maize, originally from Mesoamerica and spread north from the southwest, became widespread in the south of the Great Plains around 700 CE. Numerous plains peoples hunted the American bison or buffalo to make items used in everyday life, such as food, cups, decorations, crafting tools, knives, and clothing. The tribes followed the seasonal grazing and migration of the bison. The Plains Indians lived in teepees because they were easily disassembled and allowed the nomadic life of following game. The Spanish explorer Francisco Vasquez de Coronado was the first European to describe the Plains Indian culture. He encountered villages and cities of the Plains village cultures while searching for a reputedly wealthy land called Quivira in 1541. Coronado came across the Querechos in the Texas Panhandle. The Querechos were the people later called Apache. According to the Spaniards, the Querechos lived in tents made of the tanned skins of the cows or bison. They dry the flesh in the sun, cutting it thin like a leaf, and when dry, they grind it like meal to keep it and make a sort of sea soup of it to eat. They season it with fat, which they always try to secure when they kill a cow. They empty a large gut and fill it with blood and carry this around the neck to drink when they are thirsty. Interesting. Interesting. Coronado described many common features of Plains Indians culture: skin teepees, travois pulled by dogs, Plains Indian Sign Language, and staple foods such as jerky and pemmican. Drinking blood is what's sticking out to me. Siouan language speakers may have originated in the lower Mississippi River region. They were agriculturalists and may have been part of the mound builder civilization during the 9th through 12th centuries. Wars with the Ojibwa and Cree peoples pushed the Lakota or the Teton Sioux west of the Great Plains in the mid to late 17th century. The Shoshone originated in the western Great Basin and spread north and east into present-day Idaho and Wyoming. By 1500, some eastern Shoshone had crossed the Rocky Mountains into the Great Plains. After 1750, warfare and pressure from the Blackfoot, Crow, Lakota, Cheyenne, and Arapaho pushed eastern Shoshone south and westward. Some of them migrated as far south as Texas, emerging as the Comanche by 1700. European explorers and hunters and later settlers brought diseases against which the Indians had no resistance. Between a half and two-thirds of the Plains Indians are thought to have died of smallpox by the time of the Louisiana Purchase. The 1837 Great Plains smallpox epidemic spread across the Great Plains, killing many thousands between 1837 and 1840. In the end, it is estimated that two-thirds of the Blackfoot population died, along with half of the Assiniboines and Arikaras, a third of the Crows, and a quarter of the Pawnees. The Plains Indians found by Coronado had not yet obtained horses. It was the introduction of the horse that revolutionized Plains culture. When horses were obtained, the Plains tribes rapidly integrated them into their daily lives. People in the Southwest began to acquire horses in the 16th century by trading or stealing them from Spanish colonists in New Mexico. As horse culture moved northward, the Comanche were among the first to commit to a fully mounted nomadic lifestyle. This occurred by the 1730s when they had acquired enough horses to put all their people on horseback. The horse enabled the Plains Indian to gain their subsistence with relative ease from the seemingly limitless bison herds. Riders were able to travel faster and farther in search of bison herds and to transport more goods, thus making it possible to enjoy a richer material environment than their pedestrian ancestors. For the Plains peoples, the horse became an item of prestige as well as utility. They were extravagantly fond of their horses and the lifestyle they permitted. The first Spanish conqueror to bring horses to the New World was Hernan Cortez in 1519. However, Cortez only brought about 16 horses with his expedition. Coronado brought 558 horses with him on his 1539 to 1542 expedition. At the time, the Indians of these regions had never seen a horse. Only two of Coronado's horses were mares, so he was highly unlikely to have been the source of the horses that Plains Indians later adopted as the cornerstone of their culture. In 1592, however, Juan de Onates brought 7,000 head of livestock with him when he came north to establish a colony in New Mexico. His horse herd included mares as well as stallions. Pueblo Indians learned about horses by working for Spanish colonists. The Spanish attempted to keep knowledge of riding away from native people, but nonetheless they learned, and some fled their servitude to their Spanish employers and took horses with them. Some horses were obtained through trade in spite of prohibitions against it. Other horses escaped captivity for a feral existence and were captured by native people. In all cases, the horse was adopted into their culture and herds multiplied. By 1659, the Navajo from northwestern New Mexico were raiding the Spanish colonies to steal horses. By 1664, the Apache were trading captives from other tribes to the Spanish for horses. The real beginning of the horse culture of the Plains began with the Pueblo Revolt of 1680 in New Mexico and the capture of thousands of horses and other livestock. They traded many horses north to the Plains Indians. In 1683, a Spanish expedition into Texas found horses among native people. In 1690, a few horses were found by the Spanish among the Indians living at the mouth of the Colorado River of Texas, and the Caddo of eastern Texas had a sizable number. Now, 3:14 on the clock. Who is Amalek? In the Bible, Amalek is a nomadic desert tribe and nation that is described as the Israelites' enemy. The name Amalek can refer to the descendants of Amalek, the grandson of Esau, or anyone who lived in their territories in Canaan. The Amalekites were active in the Sinaitic region, Negev, Araba region, Ezion-Geber, interior Arabia, Philistine country, and Ephraim. What was the sin of the Amalekites? The Amalekites attacked the Jewish people when they escaped from Egypt. This created divine rage against them. Moses was ordered to remember the attack, and Saul asked to attack the Amalek nation. The Amalekites harassed the Hebrews during their exodus from Egypt and attacked them at Rephidim near Mount Sinai, where they were defeated by Joshua. They were among the nomadic raiders defeated by Gideon and were condemned to annihilation by Samuel. Their final defeat occurred in the time of Hezekiah. The curse of Amalek. To his 17 to his exhausted troops, turns 1,500 combat fatigued men into as many fighting machines with ice in their blood, fire in their nerves, and death in their hands. Let's just take another look at Amalek. So, Islamic tradition considers Amalek to be an Arabian tribe in pre-Islamic Mecca and Medina, or North African descendants of Ham, the son of Noah. In some rabbinical interpretations, Amalek is etymologized as Amlak, a people who lick blood. Now, what did I just say those people did? Drank blood. Oh, sookie now. Okay, so according to the Hebrew Bible, Amalek was the son of Eliphaz, himself the son of Esau, ancestor of the Edomites and the brother of Israel. And Eliphaz's concubine, Timnah. Timnah was a Horite and sister of Lotan, according to a midrash. Timnah was a princess who tried to convert to Judaism. However, she was rejected by Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. She replied she would rather be a handmaiden to the dregs of Israel than be a mistress of another Gentile nation. To punish the patriarchs for their attitudes, Timnah birthed Amalek, whose descendants would cause Israel much distress. Amalek was also the product of an incestuous union, since Eliphaz was Timnah's stepfather. According to 1 Chronicles 1:36, after he committed adultery with the wife of Seir the Horite, who was Timnah's biological father. First century Roman Jewish scholar and historian Flavius Josephus refers to Amalek as a bastard in a derogatory sense. Amalek is described in Genesis 36 and 16 as the chief of Amalek, among the chiefs of the sons of Esau, from which it is surmised that he ruled a clan or territory named after him. In the Oracle of Balaam, Amalek was first called the first of the nations. One modern scholar believes this attests to Amalek's high antiquity, while traditional commentator Rashi states he came before all of them to make war with Israel. The Amalekites were claimed to be Amalek's descendants through the genealogy of Esau. According to the Hebrew Bible, the Amalekites inhabited the Negev and Sinai. They appear to have lived a nomadic or semi-nomadic lifestyle along the fringes of southern Canaan's agricultural zone. This is probably based on the association of this tribal group with the steppe region of ancient Israel and the area of Kadesh, Genesis 14:7. As a result, the Amalekites are identified throughout the Hebrew Bible as a recurrent enemy of the Israelites. In Exodus chapter 17, verses 8 through 16, during the exodus from Egypt, the Amalekites ambushed the Israelites encamped at Rephidim, but are defeated. Moses orders Joshua to lead the Israelites into battle, while Moses, Aaron, and Hur watch from a nearby hill. When Moses' hands holding his staff are raised, the Israelites prevail. But when his hands are lowered, the Israelites falter. He sits with his hands held up by Aaron and Hur until sunset, securing the Israelite victory. In Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 17 through 19, the Israelites are specifically commanded to blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. once they have taken possession of the promised land in retribution for what Amalek did to them on the way as they were coming out of Egypt. A reference to the Amalekite ambush on the Israelites at Rephidim. Earlier in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verses 1 through 16, and Deuteronomy chapter 25, verses 16 through 18, they are commanded to utterly destroy all the inhabitants of the idolatrous cities in the promised land and their livestock. Scripture purports that King Saul ultimately loses favor with Yahweh for failing to kill King Agag and the best livestock of the Amalekites in 1 Samuel 15 in defiance of these commandments. 322. In Numbers chapter 14, verse 45, the Amalekites and Canaanites kill a group of Israelites that tried to enter the hill country of the Amorites without Moses' permission. In Judges chapter 3, verse 13, Amalek and their Moabite and Ammonite allies defeat Israel so that the Moabites could oppress them. Judges chapter 10, verses 11 through 13 confirms Amalek as being one of the many oppressors of Israel. In Judges chapter 6, verse 1 through 6, Amalek and their Midianite allies destroy Israelite farms as far as Gaza, including inducing a famine. They also helped the Midianites wage wars against Israel, according to Judges chapter 6, verses 32 through 34, and Judges chapter 7, verses 11 through 13. In 1 Samuel chapter 15, verses 1 through 9, Samuel identifies Amalek as the enemy of Israelites, saying, "Thus says the Lord of hosts, I will punish Amalek for what he did to Israel, how he ambushed him on the way when he came up from Egypt," a reference to Exodus. God then commands Saul to destroy the Amalekites by killing man, woman, infant, and suckling. This massacre is believed to be a retelling of the raids in 1 Samuel chapter 14, verse 48. Although it additionally specifies that it occurred in the city of Amalek, which was believed to be the principal place of arms or the metropolis of Amalek. In 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 33, Samuel identifies King Agag of Amalek as an enemy and killer, saying, "As your sword has made women childless, so shall your mother be childless among women." In 1 Samuel chapter 27, verse 8 through 9, David and his men conduct raids against the Amalekites and their Jeshurite and Gezerite allies. He kills every man and woman, but takes sheep, cattle, donkey, camels, and clothing. These Amalekites were theorized to be refugees who fled from Saul or a separate Amalekite faction that dwelt to the south of Israel. Gilly Kruger believes these narratives were anti-Saul propaganda designed to make him appear weak compared to David, since no losses were attributed to David. According to 1 Samuel chapter 30, verses 1 through 2, the Amalekites invaded the Negev and Ziklag in the Judean/Philistine border area towards the end of the reign of King Saul, burning Ziklag and taking its citizens away into captivity. David led a successful mission against the Amalekites to recover all that the Amalekites had carried away. In 2 Samuel chapter 1, verses 5 to 10, an Amalekite tells David that he found Saul leaning on his spear after the battle of Gilboa. The Amalekite claims he euthanized Saul at Saul's request and removed his crown. David gives orders to his men to kill the Amalekite for killing the anointed king, believing him to be guilty by admission. In 1 Chronicles chapter 4, verse 43, The Simeonites killed the remaining survivors of Amalek and lived in their settlements. In Psalm chapter 83, verse 7, Amalek joins Israel's other historic enemies in annihilating Israel. Their attempts are thwarted by God. Although most scholars believe the passage refers to a real historical event, they are unsure which event it should be identified with. One likely answer is that it occurred during the rise of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, the 9th to 7th centuries BC. Interpretation. Judaism. In the Mishnah Torah, Rambam derives 3 commandments, 2 positive and 1 negative, related to references to Amalek in the Torah. Number 59, type, negative, commandment, not to forget the wicked deeds which Amalek perpetrated against us. The source, do not forget, Deuteronomy chapter 25:19. Number 188, positive, to exterminate the seed of Amalek. Source, you shall blot out the memory of Amalek, Deuteronomy 25:19. 189, positive, commandment to constantly remember what Amalek did to us. Remember what Amalek did to you, Deuteronomy 25:17. Many rabbinic authorities, such as Maimonides, ruled that the commandment only applies to a Jewish king or an organized community and cannot be performed by an individual. According to Rashi, the Amalekites were sorcerers who could transform themselves to resemble animals in order to avoid capture. Thus, in 1 Samuel 15, verse 3, it was considered necessary to destroy the livestock when destroying Amalek. According to Haggadah, the commandment only applies to the future messianic era and not in present times. This limitation is widely supported by medieval authorities. Maimonides elaborates that when the Jewish people wage war against Amalek, they must request the Amalekites to accept the 7 laws of Noah and pay a tax to the Jewish kingdom. If they refuse, they are to be executed. Other Talmudic commentators argued that the calls to spare no Amalekite or blot out their memory were metaphorical and did not require the actual killing of Amalekites. Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch said that the command was to destroy the remembrance of Amalek rather than actual Amalekites. The Sfat Emet interpreted the command as fully hating Amalek without performing any physical action. The Shofet Chaim said that God would perform the elimination of Amalek and that Jews only need to remember what Amalek did to them. Isaac S.D. Sassoon believes that the Sherem commands existed to prevent the Jewish community from being endangered, but believes people should think twice before literally following them. Nathan Lopez Cardozo argues that the Torah's ethically questionable laws were intentional since they were a result of God working with an underdeveloped world. He believes that God appointed the sages to help humanity evolve in their understanding of the Torah. 3:30 on the clock, precisely. We don't have to have any blood on our hands because the wicked basically exterminate themselves. Christianity. Theologian Charles Ellicott explains that the Amalekites were subject to Sherem in the book of Samuel for the purposes of incapacitation due to their accursed nature and the threat they posed to the commonwealth of surrounding nations. Matthew Henry considers the Sherem to be defensive warfare since the Amalekites were invaders. John Gill describes the Sherem as the law of retaliation being carried out. According to Christian Hofreiter, Almost all Christian authorities and theologians have historically interpreted the Sharam passages literally. He states that there is practically no historical evidence that anyone in the great church viewed them as being purely an allegory. In particular, Augustine, Thomas Aquinas, and John Calvin have defended a literal reading of these passages at length. Origen of Alexandria is sometimes cited as having viewed the Sharam passages allegorically. Hofreiter argues that although Origen prioritized a spiritual interpretation of the Bible, he did not deny that the harem passages described historical events. Paul Copan argues that the Sharam commands were hyperbolic since the passages contain merisms such as man and woman, and Near Easterners valued bravado and exaggeration when reporting warfare. Kluger believes this is an earnest attempt to absolve the Israelites and their God of moral responsibility. Nonetheless, she argues Copan's interpretation still normalizes mass violence and hostility towards targeted groups. Islam. Ibn Khaldun believed that God ordered Saul, the king of Israel, to depose the Amalekites, which caused Haman's hostility to the Jews in the book of Esther. Modern academia. Some commentators have discussed the ethics of the commandment to exterminate all the Amalekites, including children, and the presumption of collective punishment. It has also been described as genocidal, according to genocide scholars like Norman Naimark. Kluger believes that the extermination verses can be explained by the Israelites seeing the Amalekites as their unwelcome brother and the rejected son, possessing all the negative qualities that the Israelites inherently saw within themselves, which Kluger sees as a form of self-hatred. However, she notes that the Hebrew Bible is surprisingly neutral when describing the Amalekites, and that the texts do not provide an adequate explanation on why they were singled out for for complete annihilation compared to the Egyptians and Canaanites, for example. Ada Tagar Cohen observes that Sharam commands were not uncommon in the ancient Near East. Their purpose was to show that the deity was on the aggressor's side and that the enemy deserved said deity's wrath for their sins. It also allowed kings to pursue militarist policies without taking moral responsibility. C.L. Crouch considers the Sharam commands to be an exceptional component to Israelite and Judahite warfare, since they were erratically applied even in the early stages of national and ethnic identity formation. They were an extreme means to eradicate the threat of chaos. Similar attitudes were held by Assyrian rulers such as Esarhaddon and Ashurbanipal. Historicity. No reference to Amalek or the Amalekites has been found in surviving Egyptian and Assyrian monumental inscriptions and records, even though both groups recorded various tribes and peoples of the Levant in the relevant time periods. Therefore, Hugo Winkler concluded that there were no Amalekites and that the biblical stories concerning them were entirely ahistorical and mythological. Although archaeological research has improved knowledge about nomadic Arabs, no specific artifact or site has been linked to Amalek with certainty. It is possible that some of the fortified settlements in the Negev highlands and Tel Mesos, which is near Beersheba and possibly equivalent to Horma, have Amalekite connections. If this hypothesis is correct, it is likely that Saul's anti-Amalekite campaigns were motivated by a strategic desire to wrest control of copper production at Tel Mesos. Now, where is copper production? Copper mines, miner 49ers. Okay. Copper was valuable to the early Israelites and their theology and ritual. Archaeological evidence from the Tel El Quadrat fortress and Horvat Halakim in the Negev, dated to the late 11th to early 10th century BC, could corroborate with the biblical Israelite Amalekite confrontations during the reigns of Saul and David. Bruins discovered that their inhabitants were semi-nomadic agro-pastoralists. They lived in tents, rode camels, participated in the copper trade, and worshipped gods at Massaboth shrines. Oval fortresses were built during the relevant time frame. However, other scholars argue that these settlements were inhabited by Edomites or Simeonites. And it just said that the Simeonites took over those Amalekite establishments. Okay, so we have copper mines, oval fortresses, the Petra mountain fortresses, Massaboth shrines. Okay. Alternative theories of origin. In Genesis 14, verse 7, the field of the Amalekites is mentioned, but the person who is named Amalek was not yet born. Some commentators claim that this passage is a reference to the territory which was later inhabited by the Amalekites. C. Knight elaborates this concept by making a comparison. One might say Caesar went into France, though Gaul only later became known as France. Alternatively, during the Islamic Golden Age, certain Arabic writings claim that the Amalekites existed long before Abraham. Some Muslim historians claim that the Amalekites who fought against Joshua were the descendants of the inhabitants of North Africa. Ibn Arab Shah claimed that Amalek was a descendant of Ham, son of Noah. So we have North America, Northern North America, Indiana, Hammond, Hamas, Haman, Esther. Okay, follow me. However, the name Amalek may have been given two different nations. The Arabians mention Amalek, or Amaleka among the Aborigines of Arabia, the remains of which were mingled with the descendants of Qatan or Joktan in Adnan and became Mastarabs or Makarabis. That is, Arabians were mixed with foreigners. And again, there we go with the confusion of faces. They smile in your face all the time. They want to take your place. They backstab us. Backstab us. They smile in your face. Talking about God. You love God? We love your God too. No, you don't. You're atheists. And we anti-atheists. All right, so John Gill believes the Amalekites of Genesis 14 and 7 were equivalent to the Hamite Arabian Amalekites described by Muslim scholars. He argues the Amalekites were always allied with the Canaanites who descended from Ham, were conquered by the Shemite Chedorlaomer, existed before the Edomite Amalekites, thus affirming Numbers 24, verse 20. And that the Edomites never rescued these Amalekites from Saul's campaigns due to intertribal feuds. By the 19th century, many Western theologians believed that the nation of Amalek could have flourished before the time of Abraham. Matthew George Easton theorized that the Amalekites were not the descendants of Amalek by taking a literal approach to Genesis chapter 14, verse 7. However, the modern biblical scholar Gerald L. Mattingly uses textual analysis to glean that the use of Amalekite in Genesis 14 and 7 is actually an anachronism. And in the early 19th century, Richard Watson enumerated several speculative reasons for the existence of a more ancient Amalek than Abraham. In the exegesis of Numbers chapter 24, verse 20, concerning Balaam's utterance, Amalek was the first one of the nations, but his end afterward will be even his perishing. Richard Watson attempts to associate this passage to the first one of the nations that developed post-flood. According to Samuel Cox, the Amalekites were the first in their hostility toward the Israelites. Abrahamic traditions. Jewish traditions. Amalek is the archetypal enemy of the Jews and the symbol of evil in Jewish religion and folklore. Ner Masalha, Elliot Horowitz, and Joseph Stern suggest that the Amalekites represent an eternally irreconcilable enemy that wants to murder Jews. In post-biblical times, Jews associated contemporary enemies with Amalek or Haman, and occasionally believed preemptive violence is acceptable against such enemies. Groups identified with Amalek include the Romans, Nazis, Stalinists, ISIS, and bellicose Iranian leaders such as Mahmoud Ahmadinejad. More metaphorically, to some Hasidic rabbis, particularly the Baal Shem Tov, Amalek represents atheism or the cynical rejection of God. Oh my God, I just said that. Which leads to unethical hedonism. This is sometimes known as the Amalekite doctrine. In contemporary times, religious Jews associate Amalek with violent anti-Semites, nihilism, and Jewish doubt in God. During the Purim festival, the book of Esther is read in commemoration of the salvation of Jewish people from Haman, who plotted to kill all Jews in Persian Empire. It is customary for the audience to make noise and shout whenever Haman is mentioned in order to desecrate his name based on Exodus chapter 17:14, that is 1714. It is also customary to recite Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 17 through 18 on the Shabbat before Purim. This was because Haman was considered to be an Amalekite, although this label is more likely to be symbolic rather than literal. Some Iranophilic Jews interpreted Haman's Amalekite background as being anathema to both Jews and pure-blooded Iranians. Christian traditions. Early church fathers such as Justin Martyr, Irenaeus, and Cyprian consider the defeat of Amalek in Exodus chapter 17, verses 8 through 13, to be reminiscent of Jesus defeating the powers of the devil at the cross. Origen sees the battle as an allegory of the law mysteriously invoking Christ, who recruits strong people, or Christians, to defeat the demonic strong man as described in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12. John Gill believes that Amalek is a type of Antichrist that raises his hand against the throne of God, his tabernacle, and his saints. He believes the phrase from generation to generation in Exodus chapter 17, verse 16, specifically refers to the Messianic age, where Amalek and other anti-Christian states are exterminated by the Lamb. Likewise, Charles Ellicott notes that the Amalekites were collectively called the sinners in 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 18, which was only used elsewhere for the Sodomites in Genesis 13 and 13. To but and gore. To butt and gore. Do. Dukes of Edom. Doo-doo. Doo-doo boys. Dookie shoots. Oh, y'all disgust me. So, Carl Friedrich Kiel and Franz de Wisch state that the Amalekites were extinct by the second half of Hezekiah's reign. Professor Philip Jenkins notes that Christian extremists have historically labeled enemies such as Native Americans, Protestants, Catholics, and Tutsis as Amalekites to justify their genocides. Jews and victims of the Crusades were also called Amalekites. Because of this, modern Christian scholars have re-examined the biblical narratives that inspired these atrocities using philology, literary analysis, archaeology, and historical evidence. I need my computer. Islamic traditions. Islamic commentators believe the Amalekites were an ancient Arabian tribe. The monotheistic Ishmaelites evangelized to them in Mecca and later supplanted their population. However, the paganism of the Amalekites and other Arabian tribes negatively influenced the Ishmaelites, including their approach to the Kaaba. Adam J. Silverstein observes that most of the medieval Muslim world ignored the Book of Esther or modified its details, despite their familiarity with the Persian Jewish community. This was caused by their attempt to reconcile the biblical Esther with the Quranic Haman, who was the antagonist of the Exodus narrative, and Persian mythological historical traditions. Notable exceptions include Ibn Khaldun, who affirmed the Amalekite origins of Haman and his anti-Semitic vendetta. V for vendetta. Modern usage. Rabbis generally agree that Amalekites no longer exist, based on the argument that Sennacherib deported and mixed the nations. So it is no longer possible to determine who is Amalekite. Confuse their faces. Since the Holocaust, the phrase as it appears in Deuteronomy chapter 25, verse 17 is used as a call to witness. Yad Vashem, Israelites' memorial to the Holocaust, features the phrase on a banner and in letters between European Jews during the Holocaust. They plead with each other to bear witness. In modern Israel, in the Israel-Palestine conflict, some Israeli politicians and extremists have compared Palestinians to Amalek, stated that the Palestinians are the Amalekites, or accused Arabs of exhibiting behavior that is typical of Amalekites. Yasser Arafat was called the Amalek and Hitler of our generation by 200 rabbis. Many in the Gush Emunim movement see Arabs as the Amalek of today. One reason includes the belief that Amalek is any nation that prevents Jews from settling in the land of Israel, which includes the Palestinians. During the 2014 Gaza war, a leading yeshiva identified Palestinians as the descendants of the ancient Amalekites and Philistines. Genealogically, Arabs are not related to Amalekites, and prior to the Arab-Israeli conflict, some Jews associated Amalek with the Roman Empire and medieval Christians. Conversely, some ultra-Orthodox groups consider Zionists to be Amalekites due to Zionist anti-Semitism. During the 2023 through 24 Israel-Hamas war, beginning in October 2023, Benjamin Netanyahu said that the Israeli government was committed to completely eliminating this evil from the world. And he also stated, "You must remember what Amalek has done to you," says our Holy Bible. And we do remember. at an argument to the International Court of Justice about allegations of genocide in the 2023 Israeli attack on Gaza and South Africa, presented the comments as inciting genocide against the Palestinian people. Netanyahu denied that it was his intention, stating the South African accusation reflected a deep historical ignorance since he was referring to Hamas, not Palestinians as a whole. As I stated, 120 on the clock, 121, 21, 20. The wicked shall take out themselves. What does scripture say? That nation shall rise up against nation and people against people. Yes, yes, yes. Let's read that. Matthew verse 24. Yes, my Bible app. Matthew verse 24 and 6 says, we're going to go to 4. And Jesus answered and said unto them, take heed that no man deceive you, for many shall come in my name, saying, I am Christ, and shall deceive many. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in divers places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you or try, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. And then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall rise, and shall deceive many. And because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. But he that shall endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then the end shall come. 122. Oh, and that abomination of desolation. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house, neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day, for then shall be great tribulation, such as was not since the beginning of this world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. Then if any man shall say unto you, lo, here is Christ, or there, believe it not. For there shall arise false Christs and false prophets, and shall show great signs and wonders, insomuch that if it were possible, they shall deceive the very elect. Behold, I have told you before. Wherefore, if they shall say unto you, behold, he is in the desert, go not forth. 124 on the clock. Behold, he is in the secret chambers, believe it not. For as the lightning cometh out of the east, and shineth even unto the west, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For wheresoever the carcass is, there will the eagles be gathered together. 3:55 on the clock, 88%. The coming of the Son of Man. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened. You heard me? Hey, you heard me? Well, it say the sun shall be darkened. What the book say you gave me with the turtles on? Blackout. Blackout. And the moon shall not give her light, and the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heavens shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and then shall all the tribes of the earth mourn, and they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. And he shall send his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and putteth forth leaves, ye know that summer is nigh. So likewise ye, when ye shall see all these things, know that it is near, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. Heaven and earth shall pass away, but my words shall not pass away. But of that day and hour knoweth no man. Oh, this gives me the creeps. No, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered into the ark, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. Then shall two be in the field, the one shall be taken, and the other left. Two women shall be grinding at the mill, the one shall be taken, and the other left. Watch therefore, for ye know not what hour your Lord doth come. But know this, that if the goodman of the house had known in what watch the thief would come, he would have watched, and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. Therefore be ye also ready, for in such an hour as ye think not the Son of Man cometh. Who then is a faithful and wise servant, whom his Lord hath made ruler over his household, to give them meat in due season? Blessed is that servant whom his Lord, when he cometh, shall find so doing. Verily I say unto you, that he shall make him ruler over all his goods. But and if that evil servant shall say in his heart, my Lord delayeth his coming, and shall begin to smite his fellow servants, and to eat and drink with the drunken, the Lord of that servant shall come in a day when he looketh not for him, and in an hour that he is not aware of, and shall cut him asunder, and appoint him his portion with the hypocrites. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth